In this video, we're going to be designing an AR or maybe even a VR digital product. Hi everyone, my name is Mark and I am a product designer, UX designer, digital marketer, creative, whatever title really works. And on this channel, I talk about my design and business journey. So you might be wondering what type of application that we're going to be designing. And for me, I've been really into one thing lately, which is learning a new language. And the tool that I've been using is Duolingo. And I've been really also looking into spatial design, XR design. I mean, I made a video about it recently, or a little while ago. But because of that, I thought to myself, I love Duolingo. It's an amazing app, not gonna lie. And I love virtual reality, augmented reality, XR. Let's see if we can combine the two. So today we're designing a method that transforms your surroundings into a captivating learning experience. My goal for this project is essentially to create a feature on Duolingo that uses your phone's camera to scan real-world objects and overlay the translations on the screen. So how will we do this? Well, let's talk about my design approach. Okay, so first we're gonna do some research. We're gonna dive deep to understand the user needs and existing AR tech. From there, we'll brainstorm some creative ideas and then we'll sketch out some initial concepts. Then we might do a little bit of testing. That is really dependent on whether or not I can convince people, my friends, anyone really to try out my product. Based on the testing, which I really hope we can do, we're going to refine our designs. Then we'll test again. Hopefully by then we'll have our mid-fidelity prototype and we'll just try and make it better. At some point, I'll also need to make sure I have all of the assets that I need for this product. So all of the videos, the mock videos that I'll be using for the prototype, for the demonstration, really anything that I need. And then finally, we'll polish the design, take a step back and evaluate how it performs. Hopefully it looks good at the end. So with that explanation out of the way, let's go ahead and start. But just a quick caveat, I do want to mention that even though I outline the process, it's not like I'm going to stick to it rigidly. Even with other design methodologies, such as maybe lean UX or the double diamond method, those are, at least in my opinion, more of guidelines to help guide you throughout your design process. I'm gonna try and stick close to some of these different methodologies, utilize whatever is necessary, but for me, I tend to stick to specific frameworks when I'm just within a certain portion of the design process, and you'll see a lot of that. So with that, let's just dive in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna take you guys along my journey of me designing the entire product. So you'll just see everything raw, kind of step by step of how I put this together. So let's dive right in. So starting with research, I've kind of done a decent amount of this already. Before I even considered recording this and turning this into a video, I really wanted to understand some of the principles when it comes to XR, spatial design, augmented design, virtual reality. It's all kind of like the same world. So to start off, we have some different principles such as creating spaces that captivate users, encouraging interaction and participation, so that's engage. We have innovate, incorporating new technologies, materials, or ideas to create cutting edge spaces, and that's something like what we're doing right now, using latest advancements such as smart building technologies, AR/VR, or sustainable materials to push boundaries of traditional spatial design. That is essentially what we're doing. It's not like we're solving a problem. There's not necessarily a specific problem that we're addressing. We're more innovating on advanced technology for this feature. There's a lot of other things that I really need to make sure that I keep in mind, diversity, context, connection, comfort, most definitely, especially when it comes to virtual reality design. Say you're wearing a headset. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into account when it comes to comfort. So I made a few notes on my own as well, which are some things to consider while designing. I want to make sure that AR is the correct solution for my problem, which isn't really necessarily a problem. Once again, it's more innovating on something that I think could be useful to the application. So maybe the other points might be a little bit more applicable here. So augmented reality design should be tied to clear business and user objectives. Duolingo, let's actually search it up. Duolingo's mission. So Duolingo's mission is to make high quality education accessible to everyone regardless of background or resources. The company's goal is to make language learning fun, free, and effective for anyone who wants to learn. They want to make learning fun. I think this will be fun. So gotta keep doing it. Oh, another one. Here are some ways Duolingo works to achieve its mission. Create engaging tools. Duolingo strives to create language learning tools that are engaging, effective, and enjoyable for a wide range of users. So I think this could be very beneficial in doing that. And then something that I thought was really interesting while doing some research is how much people take into account their space when designing for spatial design. And this diagram right here really helped push in on that point, where you can see the public space, social space, personal space, and intimate space, right? It is really important to keep some of these distances in mind when designing for your feature, application, product, anything like that, mainly because of like how your product is supposed to be used. You know, if I'm using a Snapchat filter, that's probably an intimate thing, you know, within my intimate space. If I'm creating this application, it is the feature that I want to create for Duolingo, that is most definitely a public space. So what are some things that I can consider within that public space as opposed to the intimate space? What are some interruptions, some things that I have to kind of work around, distractions, things like that. And then I made a few notes on some other things to consider during the design process, which is designing interactions. So just making sure that it's intuitive, that it's very familiar, and all the different types of interactions that people have come across. Now, something like this, I could really just dive into Figma and create a prototype, a mock-up immediately without really doing much research or anything. I could just go straight into the wireframes. But I want to make this as applicable as possible, as real world as possible. So I took a look into some of the technologies that this feature could use as well. So for example, I looked at developer documentation from Apple and found an AR kit. And I looked at some of the conditions that these AR kits work the best in. I also wanted to consider some of the problems that backend developers would go through. I really just wanted to understand the entire process. So what does it look like to try and scan an object, identify it, and then show the translation on the backend side? You know, maybe that's a lot of storage. Is it possible? Is this, you know, something that's completely out of reach? I wanted to understand it completely. So looking into that is super beneficial. Okay, so we're back. We took quite a bit of a break, but we are ready to move on to the next stage. What I'm going to do is a bit of a brainstorming activity. What I want to do is figure out some ideas to address some of the different pain points that we have. So the way I'm gonna do this is I'm pretty much going to write down a category, which is going to be the pain point, and then I'm gonna set a timer, and within that timer, I'm going to write down as many ideas as I can and just add them under the category. I've found this brainstorming technique to be very useful because it really just helps me take whatever comes to my mind immediately, write it down, and then expand on it. So it could be a really bad idea as well. It's literally just whatever comes to mind and then just immediately adding it into areas that I think it's applicable. But we'll just do it, see if it helps. If not, then we can try something else. But gotta give it a shot. So now that we've written down all of the pain points and we have them all laid out, I'm going to set a timer for each and every single one, and then I'm going to write down some ideas that I have that can possibly solve that pain point on these note cards. And we're just gonna keep going and adding as many as I can and then just sort through them afterwards. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I think I've added as many things that I can think of right now. I tried adding a few more note cards at the very end to see if there was anything else I can think of, but this is my end result. Let me show you guys. So pretty much it looks like this. We got a lot of cards here, and the best thing to do now is to just sort through them and see which ones are feasible. To give you an idea of some things that I wrote down already, I'll talk through some of the pain points. So for example, I have lack of motivation as a pain point. Some things that I wrote down were some maybe in-app challenges that we can introduce, separate progress tracker for this feature, just the tool, integrated rewards maybe, and then leaderboards that are specific for AR features. Another one that we have, for example, is the pain point where the tool is struggling to scan objects and recognize them. I have an accuracy feedback thing that I suggested, something where maybe the user could be prompted to say if the translation was correct and if the item wasn't recognized correctly. If that's the case, then they could just let us know and we can add that to the next update. There's a few other things, such as a pain point where it might be complicated. We have simple onboarding. For confusion over the interface and translation, anything like that, we have visual cues. For the possible pain point of people finding objects to scan, I have object suggestions and maybe scanning events where we tell people to go and find certain specific things. These are all just initial ideas, so we haven't sorted through any of them, which I will do right now. All right, I think we just sorted through everything. I have a lot of things that I took out, and we're left with a decent amount of features and things that I think are important to include to address some of those pain points we talked about. So this is where we're at now. This is how many cards we have. A lot less than what we started with. So let me go ahead and get this into the Figma file and see where we head to next. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section. I actually wanted to create a user journey and just kind of map out some of the buttons, questions, possible things that I can ask the users so that they can, get through the AR product easily. And then I started to realize that I don't know exactly what it would look like. It's kind of difficult to map out a feature like that. So in order to be specific and hit all touch points, I started creating a customer journey map. The goal of this is to pretty much get a broad idea of how the customer will move through all stages of adopting this new feature. This will help me figure out where to place the feature in the Duolingo app. It'll also help me figure out what questions to ask, prompts to give the user in order for them to figure out how to onboard them into the application. So many different things that'll essentially let me know how my feature would look like. Okay, so I actually took a little bit of time and completed the user journey map. So really quickly to go over some of the additional ones that I made, which are the engagement and retention sections. A lot of the touch points here is really just how can I keep people engaged on the AR tool and how can I keep them using it in the future. So, making sure the AR tool is on the home screen for easy access, and then just some push notifications or daily reminders so we can get people to use it. And this is actually very similar to how Duolingo is currently doing it. So it's not like we're doing anything completely new or deviating away from the way that they typically do things, which is really important for the development of this new feature. We don't want to do anything that feels completely different from the current experience that Duolingo has. And some other things I can imagine the user doing is incorporating the AR tool into their daily learning. So, scanning objects while they travel or just in their home, and then just saving anything that they scan, and that going into an area that you can reference and use in your daily practice. There's definitely a few pain points I can imagine within the engagement and retention sections. So for example, frustration when it comes to the AR tool recognizing an object or scanning it, and just like the lack of motivation to use it daily. When it comes to retention, we want to keep users consistently using the AR tool. So some things that we can do is track the progress, like the way that Duolingo currently does it. We can also request user feedback in order to make improvements to the tool. All of these different touch points will help the user identify whether or not the tool is contributing to their learning. But some pain points that I can see here is the lack of the new use cases in their environment, and also just difficulty finding objects to continuously scan. I can definitely see that being an issue. And that's pretty much all I have for the customer journey map. This will definitely help me create like a detailed user flow, which is the next step. It'll also help me brainstorm solutions to a lot of the pain points that we were able to think about here. But before we jump into that next section, I'm just gonna take a quick breather and give my brain a break. So, one sec. All right, so after a decent amount of time and effort poured into creating the user flow, I have two final flows that I want to talk about. One of them is pretty much introing / onboarding people into the new AR feature, and the other one is just the normal usage of the AR filter or feature. So whenever someone opens the app and opens the AR feature, that's the second flow, and the first one is just when we initially introduce it, how is it going to look when somebody tries to use it for the first time? Or at least getting someone's attention to use it for the first time. So it's pretty self-explanatory, especially when we have the guide over here or the legend that kind of explains what everything is. We start off with the task, which is the AR feature onboarding, and it starts by someone opening the Duolingo app. They get to the home screen and they get a notification for the new AR feature. From there, they have a decision to make whether or not they want to navigate to the feature. If they select no, then they're just back to the home screen, and they have multiple different points in which they can go off to. So I didn't want to document that just for the sake of keeping things pretty concise and not as complex. So if they say yes, then they go into the intro video / video tutorial. What I'm hoping for is one of those storytime videos that Duolingo throws into your lessons, so those characters can explain how this feature works. Obviously, I don't know if I can make that or have the capability to make anything like that. I'll figure out some workaround for the actual prototype, but for now, that is the intended journey. From there, you can decide whether or not you want to continue to use the app or not. You can just go back to the home screen. If you do, then within the app or within the new feature, we're gonna give you some simple onboarding cues, visual cues on what you can select to use the new AR feature. From there, you're just taken to the AR camera screen and a pop-up will appear, which will pretty much just ask for permissions to use the camera. Once you agree, the journey ends with the camera screen. So that is the first onboarding event. A lot of the things we wanted to take in consideration were what we included here from the brainstorming technique that we used. So that's why you see a lot of random things such as the prompts or the simple onboarding visual cues, because those are things that we discussed at the beginning. So the next journey, I already talked about this earlier, but it's the meat of it all. It is how the feature is supposed to work when you actually get to it. So you just open the AR Duolingo feature. I'm gonna skip the home screen, all of that, just get straight to it. And you're hit with a camera screen with prompts. So whatever those prompts are, who knows? We're gonna figure it out, but we definitely need it to be helpful, right? Whatever the prompts are on the camera screen, we haven't decided yet, but the prompts are meant to help guide you use the AR feature. Regardless, you move on and you scan an item. The item is then scanning/loading and a translation appears on the screen. From there, you can decide whether or not the object is correct. If it's not, then maybe you can help us with some feedback, tell us what the item is, and maybe just give us a little bit of a response so that we can fix it in the future. This gives us room to fix bugs for later iterations and continuously update. If it is correct, then you have the option to decide whether or not you want to add it to your vocabulary so you can practice it for later. How Duolingo has that practice hub, you can definitely have a feature there for AR stuff or just include it within your vocabulary to continuously practice. If you decide not to add it to your vocabulary, you're just gonna restart the journey and go straight to the beginning. If you do, we'll just give you a confirmation that it's been added and then you're back to the beginning of the journey. It's a really simple feature. Just scan an item, translate it, add it, yes or no. Is it correct? Yes or no? Things like that. We don't want it to be too complicated. It's supposed to be fun, easy to use, and really immersive. So that's pretty much it. Those are the two user flows that I'm going to be focusing on for this project, and I'm going to then move on to the wireframing areas. I'm going to use the user flows to pretty much just figure out what to include on the wireframes. I'm just going to kind of bullet it out and then hopefully create some good designs. So we'll move on to that step and see how things go. Okay, so it's been a while, but I have a few updates. After mapping out the user flow and journey, I had a pretty solid idea of how I wanted this feature to function. So I jumped into Figma and started designing the screens. At first, I experimented different ways users could access this feature. Maybe it should live at the bottom navigation bar alongside all the main tabs, or maybe tucked away in the top right corner. I wanted to find a placement that felt natural without cluttering the UI. Then I took a step back and thought, what is this feature, really? It's a new practice tool, not a core part of Duolingo's main learning flow. So that realization helped me define its priority within the app. Instead of forcing it into the main navigation, I decided to place it within the practice or the training tab, where users already go to sharpen their skills. Once I nailed down the placement, I played around with the icons and made some UI tweaks before landing on the final design and flow. So currently I'm trying to actually build out a real application, and right now we've gone through a ton of different ways in order to kind of figure out how to do that. At the moment, I'm trying to make sure that the AR feature can actually scan something and recognize it, and in order to do that, I have to train it to recognize that, whatever that item is. So right now I'm gonna go and scan maybe like 3 different items to see if we can train our model, our software, our product, in order to recognize it when time comes. All right, so there we go. So in order for the feature to actually recognize different objects, I have to use this app in order to scan those objects and make a model, a 3D model that will help us recognize it in the future. So let's go and do that. Okay, so we're gonna be scanning a pair of scissors. So these are the instructions that it actually gave me. It comes with a ton of instructions on how to scan the object so that it's going to work. So the issue is though that it's incredibly zoomed in. I can't really I have to take far steps back. So we're just gonna go ahead and do that and take some photos of this pair of scissors. For the first test, I scanned a pair of scissors. Now, if you're not familiar, the iPhone actually has a LiDAR scanner, which is pretty much a fancy way of saying it uses lasers to measure distances and create 3D models of objects and environments, which is actually really cool. But the thing about it is that it's a very precise process, and since it was my first time working with it, the model turned out just a little wonky. So I ran the scan again just to make sure I got a cleaner result. That did not work out last time, so putting it against a white paper, and let's see, I'm gonna do a few more things to get a better contrast. So this helps me get rid of the harsh shadows that are on the white paper, and so I'm just gonna continue to take some photos. Hopefully this doesn't get in the way, and hopefully it's not too bright for the camera, but yeah, we're just gonna take some photos and see what happens. 116 photos, let's see if any of those work, or if they work in general, because I need all of them. All right, things got really complicated from here, so instead of dragging you through every technical detail, here's a quick rundown of what I did. After completing the scan, I loaded it into Xcode and generated a 3D file from all the images that I took. Then I imported that into Vuforia Engine to create a model target, which helps recognize the object in augmented reality. And finally, I brought it into Unity, made final adjustments, dropped in my designs, and wrote some code to get everything working smoothly. So with that, here is my final product. Okay, so I have my phone here and I have the prototype opened up, and I'm just gonna show you guys my screen. I'm also going to screen record this so that you get a better idea of what it looks like on the actual, application. And before I actually show you the feature, I just wanna note that the scissors are here and they're placed against a white piece of paper just to make it easier on the model to recognize it when time comes. So let's go ahead and show you guys this. Go to the next tab. You can switch between the tabs here. It's a little wonky just because it's Figma, but you scroll down and then you have that identify tab. Then you click on it and it activates the camera, right? So we have the camera here. All right, so what did I learn? Well, this project took way more effort than I expected, but it was a solid learning experience. This feature, even though it's pretty interesting, isn't something the user needs on a daily basis. It's more of an experimental way to integrate AR into learning languages. And the process is honestly pretty inefficient, mainly because recognizing and storing 3D models takes up a lot of space and requires extra steps that slow everything down. I mean, you guys saw how long this process was. Which actually brings me into my next point of what I wish I could change. If I were to refine this project, I'd make one major improvement, which is AI-powered object recognition. Instead of relying on 3D models, AI could simply analyze an image and generate translations instantly, which would save time, reduce storage needs, and make the experience overall smoother. I also wish I had more time to fully flesh out the user experience, things like notifications, a guided onboarding flow, or even a full demo to showcase the feature in action. At the end of the day, this was a great experiment, and I learned a lot, especially in Unity, which was my main goal for this project. I definitely want to dive into more XR projects in the future, so if you have any ideas for something I could try and maybe make a video about, drop a comment below. And of course, if you liked this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe. But other than that, I will see you in the next one.